So when a marketer comes to us, they are telling us, I only want to serve my message to certain people, maybe a certain time of day, certain geo-region, certain people with certain interest, or people only in a certain context. So not all ads are competing for the same slot on any given page. The second is frequency capping. So that's a marketer saying, look, I'm glad you found this. I'm selling BMWs. I'm glad you found someone interested in BMWs, but I don't want to serve my ad 1,000 times to one person. Right? I'm going to cap that and say, within a given time frame, say a day, maybe a week, just show 6. And if after 6 times they're not interested, I'll learn to live that they don't like my creative on my ad. But I don't want to waste my ad spend on the same person over and over again, even if they're what you're guessing to be is the right person. The next one is the fraud. We already talked about the pub click fraud, publisher click fraud. We didn't talk so much about robots. So unfortunately, there's a bunch of evil people in universities. I mean, there's a lot of people doing research, and they write robots that go out and pretend that they're real people, but they're not. So while they consume a lot of page views, and oftentimes they'll even click on real ads, they'll never actually make a purchase. So, the good news is even when they're trying to be real people, they consume so many page views, right? 1,000 page views in a minute. They're probably not a real person. So we can again look for differences and patterns between this robot activity and real people activity to kind of tease them apart. But obviously, if you were to go to a marketer and say, how much would you spend to serve your ad to a robot, they're going to ask, well, how much will a robot actually pay me? And we say 0, and they say, well, that's how much I'll pay you for serving my ad to them. So it's in our interest to identify those robots and take them out of the universe of when we're trying to serve an ad to a person. So another constraint that I keep telling our marketers they should not have in there is budget, right? They constantly tell me that they only want to spend a small amount of money as opposed to a large amount of money. I keep trying to get them to spend a large amount of money. But oftentimes campaigns will run out of money, so we've got the perfect opportunity for this ad. This is a great opportunity. How could you pass this by? You're out of budget. I can't serve it. But that is a real constraint on the ad system. And then final one we talked about a little bit, which is that minimum threshold that a publisher will want to have an ad served on their page. So there's some publishers that say, I've got a very important brand, and I don't want to water it down by going to that 50-cent mark. I want to command a premium price, and if you've got an ad that is above my threshold, serve it. If you don't, then I'll forego that higher yield in exchange for trying to have a certain cachet about the types of ads that can afford to be on my site. And again, going back to my Yahoo days, if you look at the Yahoo front page, right, it costs a lot of money to get your ad banner on the Yahoo front page. You don't see those same commercials that you see maybe in the middle of the night running on the Yahoo homepage. There's good reasons for that. So going back to data mining and why we're all here, what's the optimization goal? Well, we wanted to maximize the yield for the publisher, and we want to maximize the ROI for the advertiser. So unfortunately, it's a big problem. We've got in our own network about 8,000 websites, and that's domains. So that's saying like yahoo.com, even though Yahoo may have tens of millions of actual pages, that's counting as one in this equation right here. And then at any given time, we've got about 1,000 advertisers. So we've got, again, this huge problem set, 8 million combinations of just the domain alone, much less all the context on that domain and the advertiser. And of course, one person's, Joe's sportsblog.com is going to perform differently than ESPN.com. So even if you do say, they're both sports, you can't get away with that type of oversimplification in our cardinality reduction. But just looking at websites and advertisers, we're up to 8 million combinations. And then, according to ComScore, we've got 163 million visitors. If you look at home and work views of that, from the same person, the ComScore number is trying to get to people. And online, the old joke of, no one knows if you're a dog. Well, we obviously don't really know who people are on the other side of a web screen. We don't have any registered data. So for us, that 163 million is actually a low number. We see cookies, and if you just think about yourself, almost everyone has a home and work. Maybe people have more than one computer in their household, like I do. And so that number is a lot larger than just 163 million. But if you multiply those two things together, you get roughly 1.3 billion decisions you have to do a day. And ironically enough, that's the right number. Our ad server is doing about 1.3 billion decisions per day, even though we're seeing far more combinations than the simple math would otherwise suggest. So we've got another constraint, and that's latency. So not only do we have to do all these decisions per day, we have to do them really, really fast. And that constrains the types of technology we can bring to bear on the problem set. So if you think about just your normal activity online, how long will you wait for an ad to load on a page? Right? Probably not very long. So we've got to be really quick before you move to the next page. So typical response rates are about half a second. So we've got to make a decision and also serve that ad in about half a second. So that seems like that's, a pretty aggressive time frame. But then, unfortunately, there's a bunch of stuff we don't control, which is the latency. So the browser has to come from the website over to our servers and then back to the website again, and that eats up about 200 milliseconds of that half a second. So we're down to 300 milliseconds to go look through all these possible combinations and make the quote-unquote best decision, right decision at that given time. So that's kind of the world I live in, and it's a really interesting world. So let's switch gears and look at the behavioral targeting landscape. So this is really my passion. I've been doing behavioral targeting in one form or another for about 10 years. It's begun to get a lot of press recently, but I've been doing it for a really long time. The good news is it's not as scary or bad as everyone makes it out in the press. The bad news is it could be, right? There is potential harm that could come from behavioral targeting. We could collect all this data and use it against you in a job interview. That would be bad. The good news is we don't. The bad news is maybe someone out there eventually could. So I'm working with industry consortium groups. I'm the co-chair of the Data Standards Committee for the IAB, Interactive Advertising Bureau, that is one of the main standards bodies for our industry, trying to make sure that this technology is only used for good. So let's figure out what this technology is. So, quick definition, behavioral targeting, it's, again, helping the marketer match creative to visitors based on prior activities, prior history. The targeting I put in quotes. So the reason I do this is really it's not about targeting. We're building up an interest profile. So Google came out with interest-based ads. That's a step in the right direction. But really, if you say behavioral targeting, it makes everyone think about this is the only use of the data, and it's not. So we do use this data to try to improve the relevancy of the ads we show to people. That's the targeting side. But we also do it for non-ad related data. So when you go to Amazon and you get recommendations, right, that's based on a profile. And so there's a personalization aspect to the same technology. We also use it in reporting, which I'll show a little bit later. And then we can also use this as an input into that optimization engine to improve the match rates of the right content to the right people. All right, so why do people care? This is the why should you care slide. People are spending more and more money on this technology. So for the first 10, 15 years of the internet, everyone was marketing ads to pages. Now they're beginning to realize that maybe they can do better if they care about the person behind that page. So the better we can guess what people's interests are, the more likely the ad is to be relevant, more likely they are to click, more likely everyone is to be happy. Visitor sees more relevant content, advertiser has better ROI, publisher actually gets a higher yield because BT tends to have a premium price tag associated with it. So they're able to serve fewer ads at a higher price and then resell the remaining ads to other people, even at a lower price, and make more money.